When people talk about the new Argus, they either see him as someone weaker or stronger. People either say that he's outright weaker or that his users just can't adapt. Well, as an expert Argus mate, I think Argus was nerfed and is now weaker. Let me explain. Let's start with the changes on Argus. Note that what I'm saying is based on my gameplay on main server high rank. There are also lower rank situations, like where I could dominate in lower ranks. And yes, not to be arrogant, so watch till the end to see my reasoning, since other servers could function very differently. Anyways, first is passive. The scaling and base damage was nerfed by a considerable amount for a late-game hero. The heal was also nerfed much, but in turn, critical strikes gets you 5 more energy than before. Also, now passive bar doesn't regenerate when you hit turrets. Second skill has a base damage nerf, and it now doesn't increase energy gained per hit. Instead, now it refills your energy bar instantly and stores an extra bar if you already have a full passive bar. It also gives way less movement speed now. And now, ultimate. It's a bit more complicated, but to simplify it, basically he unleashes a low scaling AoE damage and stops walking for 0.6 seconds. And unlike before where he just gets 4 seconds immortality, now his first 4 seconds is the Dark Angel state, which gives you a bit of movement speed, and if you die during that phase, you get the 4 seconds of immortality and a bit more movement speed. During this phase, it buffs his energy gained by 50 depending on crit. But he can't gain HP by attacking minions or creeps anymore in this state, and his cooldown is way higher at 60 seconds. Lowered by 50% if he doesn't use his immortality. But do the buffs and nerfs make him better? Nope. First off, he now can't really continue fighting for long because of his passive damage and heal nerf, plus the second skill adjustment in the early game. His old second skill had a lot more movement speed, and damage to minions too. There's also a trick where you could use second skill plus inspire to defeat almost any enemy at level 1. He was also generally a lot better early, before, because his second skill can be used for continuous battle. Now it's only for instant burst damage. His pushing capability is also insanely nerfed because of his passive, not getting energy on turrets, even though it is one of his main kits. I would have destroyed that turret earlier if not for the nerf. 60 seconds ult CD is also ridiculous for a general laner in the early game. You also can't generate HP from minions anymore. So yeah, it's really bad, especially with the longer cooldown. So, enemy can just run away and kill you a lot easier. Before, you could just use second skill on a minion wave and get full HP back. It's also almost impossible to use his ultimate to its full potential now. Before, you can ult while attacking, but now you have to stop moving for a split second. But that split second matters a lot in real gameplay. And you also need to hit your useless AoE on ult to get his passive buff, so you can't ult earlier. So yeah, you need to ult in the middle of everything happening and get the delay. As an Argus main, I also feel like I couldn't really chase someone properly because of his second skill nerf, and I don't want to waste ult to uncertainly chase one person. But at least the buffs makes up for it, right? Absolutely not. In fact, most of the adjustments are a nerf until now. And with this many nerfs, the trade-off isn't worth it, especially in higher ranks where almost every EXP pick is meta. That's right, no squishy heroes like Deer Roth Zilong Alpha or even Aldous. Almost all EXP users are meta-tanky picks like Khalid Gato and Tankcho. The early to late trade-off also isn't worth it, because he's basically useless, since he deals less damage early, but his late is also relatively easy to counter in higher ranks, so he's even less viable now. Unlike in higher ranks where snowball is absolute, lower ranks almost always get to the late game, so that's an advantage for Argus. For example, this clip. This is my gameplay in lower ranks. You see here, this wouldn't happen in higher ranks. Instead of running away and trying to keep me away, Badang and Gord tried to attack me, which made me get second phase ulta. They would usually waste my ultimate skill most of the time. Gord even tried to ult me when I'm immortal, so he dies. And so I get a savage. He's practically very niche, and if he gets literally all his items, then he might carry, but having one burden until he gets full items is going to be fatal in actual high rank. But in lower ranks than Glory or other servers, he might be better instead, since picks and skills and coordination are very much different. In fact, I've been getting an MVP streak with Argus there. Another example is this. Would usually do more to pressure Sun in lane and farm his clones quite easily, but since my second skill is a burst instead of continuous damage now, I'm dealing less damage now and am forced to retreat.
Your thoughts betray you.
And then Sun can just freeze my lane so I can't get the minions and I lose gold, and since my second skill does not even do nearly as much damage to minions as before, it's easier for him. Can't even get health off minions anymore, so I'm dying right now. Higher ranked players are sweatier than you think. They will even guarantee to stand behind you every time now to cover your first skill exit. At this point, I was desperate, and I tried to at least kill Sun to get the worth back. But I deal less damage before late game, and they didn't even trigger my second phase ultimate skill. I wasn't able to do much even until the game ended because of the intense snowball. But he can do infinite passive, so that's at least worth it, right? I admit that he deals more damage late game, but that's only in very late game where he has 5 to 6 items. In high ranks, or at least early to mid-season Glory and above, in main servers, people tend to end games earlier before he can even get his 5th items, unless he can be useful as a late game hero or cover. An X-plane, that is. There is a reason damage EXP laners except Benedetta aren't used on higher ranks. I think he would have a better time if he goes on the gold lane. But then again, most Argus mains aren't from main server, nor is a consistent high rank. Even the TikTok short clips you see are mostly from Classic, seen from enemy team comp. Especially with the fact that his early game is way worse, before he could at least trade towers or kill some more enemies. Now I think he's just way better on a 5-man to at least get his late game items before doing anything. Now, I just think that he's worse in trade-offs, but he's better on late game. Although he needs the late build required first in high ranks, so he's probably way better in a 5-man. It's too inconsistent unless you have 100% crit rate. Maybe not 100%, but you still need a very high crit. Sometimes you don't crit once, and that means you fail spam once. It's too luck dependent unless you have a very high amount. His one-shot mechanic is better to kill squishies than his passive spam, but that's also nerfed. So he needs like all his items before being able to function properly in high ranks. I even tried different spells on him. And I think other spells like Sprint and Flicker are better in some situations now. Before, he only uses Inspire. Theoretically, he could just fight enemy front lines. But he also couldn't do that because his passive buff only works when you have a very high crit chance. And almost all front lines are tanky, bulky heroes, at least in high rank. Which means that you need Demon Hunter's Sword and Malefic Roar or Malefic Gun, and even one item replaced could ruin your crit rate. Especially with the fact that Malefic Roar is almost always a must on high ranks, and you also need to build Demon Hunter's Sword, sometimes a lot. It's like they're very confused on what to nerf and buff. On one side, they buffed his assassination skills, but then also nerfed it on another skill, and then they buff his teamfight capability on another skill. It's too chaotic. Argus was never that good in main server high ranks to begin with. Moontun was afraid to buff him too much because of his high win rate, and the only reason he has high win rate is because split pushing is apparently OP in lower ranks, and no one aside from his users uses him. So he has a higher win rate than even meta heroes. Almost every Argus user I know are struggling with this change. The only one who doesn't is the guy who always plays in a 5-man. Even I am struggling in main server rank despite having thousands of matches. Also, usually I could solo carry in Classic with MVPs every match, but now I'm struggling to even solo carry in Classic. In conclusion, I think he might be better on lower ranks, but he's worse and not that good on higher ranks. He's also more niche now, and his trade abilities are terrible before full items, and trade is a very important thing in high ranks. He might need a role or build change to be able to even enter pro play. However, I don't know if he might be better on general lower ranks or non-main other servers, since they could function differently, and I heard Argus was pretty good from other server members. I don't know if there will be a new technique or role or build that could make him OP. Who knows, right? He might be played in tournaments too. I just think that he's worse at the moment. I'll tell you all if I find out something. Stay safe, and see ya.